Welcome to Tanakh Talk. I'm your host, William Hall, broadcasting live from Kingsland, Texas, USA, with another episode of Controversial Issues with that most controversial rabbi that I have on my show, on the internet. Welcome back. Don't smoke crack. Rabbi, how are you today?
Doing great.
Good.
Doing great. Always a pleasure to be back. Hopefully,
awesome.
We'll get our schedules, up to date and not crisscross, and hopefully, be regular again.
Yep, and I think our regular time slot is definitely going to fall on Sundays, not Mondays, and that's going to be
right.
at, what time did we decide? 11:30?
I think 11:30 your time.
11:30 my time.
Which is, I guess, 12:30.
Yes, sir, New York.
12:30 Eastern time, which will be 7:30 at night Israel time.
Gotcha. That will work. That's what we'll do.
So that'll only mean I'll have 6 hours worth of classes. Okay, so we'll work it out.
My son,
as long as the caffeine is still flowing, we're still going, we should be all right.
Well, Sunday morning is going to be slammed. It's going to be like one show, like 15-minute break in between each show, and I need to like right at that to set each show up. So it's going to be like a constant flow of show.
I don't have to set up anything, but I have to speak, so
right.
I get it.
Right. Well, we would rather not. I'm just kidding. That was a joke.
I know. But,
no, you know better than that.
Twice a week. I don't get home till 10 o'clock at night.
Right.
So
I feel you.
It's 2 o'clock your time. So
I just covered you up with my internet.
That's what it is.
Cool. All right. Let me try to find my YouTube channel here. Make sure we're all on and rolling. I think we are. Yep, we're good to go. Super duper. Hey, Dewey. Good to see you. Shalom. Good to have you here. Okay. So I'm going to start this title off with a statement, a statement. My understanding was and is still that if somebody who converts to Judaism, once they have converted, they're no longer to be seen as a convert. They're supposed to be treated just like an actual born Jew. So that certainly contradicts what the title says today. So maybe you can help us clarify that. Barbara, welcome,
and that's
Maria.
Why we do controversial issues.
Yes, indeed.
It's all about the rating.
Oh, goodness
I know
gracious.
ratings for the last month have been sagging a little bit. Rosh Hashanah came, so we're gonna we're gonna blow this thing sky high. Hopefully.
Let's see. We can hear you. Okay. I thought somebody said they couldn't hear, but actually they're talking about something else. Good deal. All right. Well, very good. Well, Rabbi, take it away. It's all yours, and we'll see where this thing goes. If I unplug you halfway through, don't just go with it. I'm just kidding.
I'm gonna go because I can't see anything anyway.
I know.
Myself.
You're flying by the seat of your pants regardless because you don't know. Hey, Janice, welcome. Good to see you again.
And don't turn me upside down, okay?
Oh, no, really? You don't really want? Why not? Now that you said that, I have to just for a moment. Hold on.
That's why we do these shows anyway.
Hold on. Okay, you should be feeling lightheaded right about now.
I can't see. Wait a minute. Where am I?
Oh gosh, that's funny.
Wait a minute. I think I'm in hyperspace.
Let me fix you because it's making me dizzy looking at it like that. Okay, there you go.
I cracked my back. That was it.
There you go. That's funny. All right.
I feel so much better.
All right, it's all yours.
So much better. You just killed me.
Take it away. It's all yours.
All right. It's a pleasure to be here. We are going to get Mirut Hashem on a fixed schedule. Yeah, this is an interesting topic. It actually came up as I was preparing probably for next month's worth of classes when I go up north. That's what I do on Monday and Wednesday. And we're learning actually right now Choshen Mishpat. The laws of Choshen Mishpat are the laws of damages. Right? Basically, one person damages another. What are they liable? What are they not liable for? So here we started out, at the beginning of the laws of damages started out with the laws of rabbinic court judges, i.e. what we call dayanim. Right? Someone who's a dayan in the vernacular is called a rabbinic court judge. So I was preparing last week and came up to this halacha that says, which we're going to see, but a convert. Can a convert be a judge? Can be a rabbinic court judge. Now, as William said earlier, very true. You never remind a convert that he's a convert, right? Just like a Baal Tshuva, someone who returns to Judaism, you don't remind them, what they've done in the past. Oh, I remember you used to eat shrimp. That's a Torah prohibition, Remind the convert, I remember when you were, this, that, the other thing, right? That's a Torah prohibition. So what happens? So now a person converts, they have a proper conversion, then why are they still considered a convert, right? Why are they not considered a full-fledged Jew? Well, for the most part, they are a full-fledged Jew. But there are certain things that come up that really we're going to cut to the chase, that come up, and there's an issue of lineage. Now, because there's an issue of lineage, what that means is because their mother wasn't Jewish or wasn't born Jewish, let's say better. So then there's a certain status. Doesn't mean the person's not Jewish, right? But there's a certain limitation by certain things. Why? Because their mother's not Jewish. So let's see. Because this is, as you mentioned, should be a major contradiction. If they're a full-fledged Jew, why should there be limitations? Right? But we know there are certain limitations. But why? Why should there be? Now, the Tur, who is the son of the Rosh, Rabbeinu Asher, lived in, in the 1100s. He was a major commentary in the back of every Talmud, right? He was a rabbi in Germany, right? Or for the German people, and he only comments normally in the Talmud when it's related to Jewish law, when it's related to halacha. So the Tur is the son of the Rosh. The Tur, in his famous commentary on Jewish law, right? Essentially a lot of it based on the Rambam, right? But the Tur speaks on the laws of, not just the laws of damages, but the laws of marriage, divorce, the holidays, prayer, just about most things that have to do with Jewish law. So the Tur says in the laws of damages, Siman number 7, halacha number 1, and he says clear, a convert cannot be a rabbinic court judge. Now we're going to have to clarify this. He cannot be a rabbinic court judge, he says, for a Jew, right? Even by monetary laws. Now, if a person has proper knowledge, they know how to make inferences. Let's say there's a contradiction in two different Gemaras, right? Let's say they can answer up. They know how to learn, right? Someone who's a rabbinic court judge has to know how to learn. Now, the question is, does he have to be an expert? Not necessarily. But he has to know at least how to learn and how to make inferences. How to make inferences, from different pieces of Talmud, how to put them together, how to answer up. He can't be just someone, what they call a Yoshev Koronos. What's a Yoshev Koronos in my language? He's a bum, right? He sits on the strings, sits on the streets, maybe he's, sipping a pina colada, but he doesn't know much, right? He knows very little. So you don't want to have somebody like that as a rabbinic court judge. If you, let's say, two people have a disagreement, they come to, this rabbinic court judge over here, and they say, we'll accept whatever you tell us. Now, this rabbinic court judge, an average guy, doesn't really know that much. And obviously, if he makes a mistake, it's not a good judgment. You need 3. Essentially, you need 3 rabbinic court judges. Having one that's an expert, okay, that's good. But there is a lenient opinion, I'll throw that out there to confuse everybody. There is a lenient opinion. If you went to one rabbinic court judge, that's good enough. Why? Because they bring a verse. They bring a verse that, and the verse is in the singular. And it says that this person is a judge for the Jewish people. It doesn't say judges. Right? It says in the singular. So what would I learn out? One of the commentaries says, I learn out I can even have 1. I don't necessarily need 3. Right? But in general, we don't hold like that opinion. You need at least 3. Right? You need at least 3. One of them, certainly has to know what they're doing. They don't have to be a worldwide expert. But they certainly, one of them at least has to be, has to know what they're doing. They have to have a certain level of knowledge. Now, that being the case, that's by monetary laws. Right? That can be by divorce, as well. But there are other things that maybe you need a base din of 23. You need a rabbinical court of 23 for, what are they going to judge? Death. They can judge death penalty if you have 23. 71, different thing. Right? Certain things you need a Sanhedrin. We don't have a Sanhedrin today. Right? We don't have a law court of 71. We don't have a temple today. So regardless, a Beis Din of 23, Beis Din of 71, not going to apply. And there are only certain things rabbinic court judges can judge anyway. So we're going to make it very easy. Not going to confuse everybody. Monetary law. Two people have a disagreement. Right? Reuven says, Shimon, you caused me damage. You owe me money. Right? They come in front of rabbinical court. They have to accept what the rabbinical court's going to say. And they're going to give their views, what happened. And then the rabbinical court's going to call it the way they see it. Now, it's not true judgment because we don't have true judgment today. Why not? Because you need a rabbi that got rabbinic ordination from someone, in the land of Israel. You have to have a tradition that you had rabbinic ordination from somebody way back when, right? Meaning in the time of the Second Temple. We don't have that today. So the Maharam Rutenberg was the rabbi, the Rosh, right? We mentioned the Rosh earlier. So in his time, he wanted to reenact this rabbinic ordination. But, a lot of people were against him, and it never happened, and we're sort of stuck. Because there are certain things we're not allowed to judge unless you had these type of rabbinic scholars that had that rabbinic ordination. So since we don't have that, so there are certain things, even if the judges see it's going to go down that path, they won't judge it, or they won't judge that aspect of it. So since everything today is more or less is compromise, right? That's what we call it. It's compromise close to judgment, but it's not real judgment. Why not? Because you don't have that rabbinic ordination. So since you don't have the rabbinic ordination, we don't have it today. So what happens? So they do pshara. They make a compromise. Regardless, I need 3 rabbinic court judges. That's how we hold. Technically, if person went in front of 2, you didn't have 3. You went in front of 2, the judgment's good, but it's called the Beis Din Chutzos. It's called, in my language, obnoxious Beis Din, a chutzpahdik Beis Din. Chutzpahdik rabbinical court. Why? Very simple. Because really you need 3. Why do I need 3? So there are 3 times the word Elohim is used, right, in different passages. Elohim means a judge, right? It's really the God of judgment, but it can also mean judges. So the rabbis learn out, since it says it 3 times in certain places, I learn out I need 3 rabbinic court judges. Now, why would it make sense I need 3 instead of 2? Because let's say the 2 disagree, then what? So you need a third. You need a third to go on the side of one or the other. And then we held like the book of Exodus, chapter 23, verse 2. That people are happy, at least I'm quoting a verse. We're going to quote another verse in a second. Right? It says over there in the book of Exodus, chapter 23, verse 2, you go after the majority. Right? So over here, by the laws of money, you need 3. By other things, you may need more. Right? But here, we'll make it easy. You need 3. So now that I need 3, one of them at least has to know what they're doing. They have to have a certain level of knowledge. But even if one's a world expert, let's say he's a world expert in the laws of damages. If he's a world expert in the laws of damages, nonetheless, he should not judge by himself. Why not? Might make a mistake. If 2 people accept this rabbi's opinion, could they do it? They could do it. If he makes a mistake, or the rabbinical court makes a mistake, in general, that's egregious. They missed the Mishnah. They missed a later commentary. They messed it up. They have to pay. Right? Then the judgment goes the other way. Right? But in general, you have 3, you go after the majority. Majority, in this case, meaning the majority for good. Because the non-Jews can say, hey, why don't you go like us? We're the majority. Christians are the majority. Muslims are the majority. Go after secular law. Maybe that's the majority. Why don't we go according to secular law, right? One of the Roman generals asked one of the rabbis this question. Why don't you go after us? So what's the simple answer? He said, yeah, that's only, when we have a doubt, we go after the majority. But here we don't have any doubts. Since we don't have any doubts, i.e. we believe the Torah is true, so we hold by the Torah. But again, in a rabbinical court, you have to go according to the majority. 2 against 1. Doesn't matter if that one dissenting opinion is the greatest rabbi of that generation. He's overruled. He's overruled because you have to go according to the majority. Good. So that was way of introduction. Not bad. Only took me 15 minutes for that. Right? So what do we say over here? So what does the Torah bring down? The Torah says that a convert, again, the laws of damages, Siman number 7, halacha number 1, right, says that a convert cannot be a rabbinical court judge. Now, we're going to have to see why, right? But he can't be a rabbinical court judge, let's just quote it. He can't be a rabbinical court judge even by monetary laws until his mother is Jewish. Right? He can judge another convert, even if his mother's not Jewish. So what does that mean? What does that mean in the vernacular? So it means very simple. Let's say Ruvain, his new name is Ruvain. His original name was Bubba Joe, right? Or whatever his name was. Charlie. We'll call him Charlie. We'll make it easy. His name was Charlie, changed his name to Ruvain. Now, he converted, changed his name to Ruvain. So now, Ruvain wants to become a rabbinical court. Ruvain converts. Right? Ruvain converts over here. He's got a lot of knowledge. Let's make him a rabbinical court judge. Got a tremendous amount of knowledge. So what do we say? He can only judge monetary laws if his mother is Jewish. In other words, they cannot judge if there are two Jews that come in. Right? Let's say Shimon and Levi have a dispute. And Reuven is on the rabbinical court or wants to be on the rabbinical court, let's say. So in that case, his mother's not Jewish. He's a convert. He can't judge a Jew. He can only judge another convert. Right? But if his mother was Jewish, let's say his mother converted. Right? So his mother converted, gave birth to Reuven sometime later, whenever it is. Reuven's also Jewish. That means his mother's Jewish. But if he himself is a convert and his mother's not Jewish, what's the halacha? The halacha is he can only judge another convert. He can only be part of rabbinical court for another convert, not for another Jew. Now, the obvious $1 million question is, why? If he's a full-fledged Jew, as you said at the beginning, then why can't he judge over here? Why can he only judge a convert? Why can he not judge, a Jew, right? What's the problem? So the Torah tells me, we're going to quote the Torah again, and I think people will be happy because I'm actually quoting sources here. Right? The Torah says, Deuteronomy chapter 17, verse 15. Right? Deuteronomy chapter 17, verse 15, Parsha Shoftim, says the following. You shall surely set over yourself a king, whom Hashem your God shall choose. Right? Again, talking about a king of Israel. King has to be, seemingly the king has to be a Jew. Right? You shall choose. How do I know? Because the verse says, you shall choose them from among your brethren. Can't have a non-Jewish king. Right? We're gonna see what this means, because this is problematic. Right? Shall you set a king over yourself, and you cannot place over yourself a foreign man who is not your brother. Right? Loaded statement here. This, what does it say? What does the Torah tell me? Torah tells me, let's look at the verse again. Torah tells me you set over yourself a king who God is going to choose from among your brethren. That's going to be the first thing. He has to be among your brethren. What does among your brethren mean? Right? If I was a carrot, I could sit here till tomorrow. What are they going to answer? Right? Simple answer would be, he has to be a Jew. 100% he has to be a Jew. Full-breaded Jew over here. Then what does the Torah tell me? It says you cannot place over yourself a foreign man who's not your brother. Now, when it says he's not your brother, if he's among your brethren, he's your brother, right? He's a fellow Jew. If he's a fellow Jew, by definition, right? The Karaites are going to be very happy with me here, right? What by definition, your fellow Jew means not a non-Jew. Right? It's got to be someone of your own people. So someone who's not your brother, again, it's a contradiction. If he's from among your brethren, he's part of your people. So why are you telling me he can't be foreign? He's not your brother. Either he is your brother, he's not your brother. Right? So it's a little bit of a catch-22. If he's Jewish, he's your brother. If he's not Jewish, he's not your brother. What about a convert? What about a convert over here? How do we look at a convert? A convert before they converted, no offense, anyone who's listening is not Jewish. You're not Jewish before you convert. Before you convert. Right? I can't even believe you said convert. Right? I sound like a Mexican here. No offense. Yeah, you're a convert. If you are a convert, that means you weren't Jewish before. We're not talking about where you might have had Jewish blood. You couldn't prove it. You didn't have any Jewish blood. We're going to make it very, very easy. You don't have any Jewish blood. You don't have any Jewish blood over here. What does that mean? That means you are a foreigner, right? But if you convert, so then you're going to tell me he's a full-fledged Jew, right? There's nothing hindering him. He can do anything, seemingly. He could be a rabbinic court judge. If it's a woman, she converts. Why can't she marry a Kohen? Oh, we're going to speak about that. Why is it a mamzer? Comes from a forbidden relationship. Can only marry a convert, someone from the same union. So what's going on? Either they're part of the Jewish people or they're not part of the Jewish people. Right? So this verse is very interesting. Right? We have to see, any Karaites out there have any definition, how they want to learn it, be more than happy, to hear. But it's a contradiction from beginning to end. Either you tell me he's a Jew, right? He's part of your brethren, or he's not. If he's not part of your brethren, then he's not a Jew. Finished. Right now, some people get upset. That's why we do this show. People are going to say, it doesn't matter. I don't have to go through conversion. I'm a Jew in my heart. I know a Jew can say I'm more Jewish than most people. Maybe. Maybe I'll cut you some slack because I'm in a good mood. Before Yom Kippur, I want to make everybody happy. But I'm probably going to tick a lot of people off because they're going to say, hey, I'm a Jew in my heart. I don't need to go through conversion. I'm sure people have heard that statement. I've heard it a lot. But a Jew in your heart doesn't mean anything. You have to go through the process. You have to go in front of a rabbinical court, right? You have to go in front of 3 Jews that keep Shabbos, right? A proper rabbinical court. Can't just say I'm a Jew in my heart. Doesn't mean anything. And what if you're a Jew in your heart and you live out in the middle of Timbuktu, right? How are you going to keep Judaism if you don't live amongst the Jews? But I'm not going to go down that path, right? That's a whole different issue. But over here, either you're a Jew, you're part of the tribe, you're part of the brethren, as we translate it, and if not, you're not your brother. Either you are or you're not. It's like being half pregnant. Either I am or I'm not. Right? So what do we see from here? What do the rabbis tell us? The rabbis tell us over here, someone who's not your brother. What does that mean? It means that a convert is not considered your brother in this case. See, the Messianics and the Christians are going to say, see, they're against non-Jews. They don't even like you when they convert. They won't give you leadership positions. They're going to cherry pick. And they're going to say, hey, look at everything going on. It's discrimination. Okay, right? It does sound like it. I'm not going to disagree. Definitely sounds like it, but we have to understand, what does the Torah say? Don't cherry pick until you hear exactly what the explanation is. Because, yeah, it does look bad, but there's an answer. So what do the rabbis tell us? The rabbis tell us the convert's not considered your brother in this case. If his mother is not a full-bred, a full-bred Jew over here. In other words, Reuven converts, and his mother's not Jewish. And his mother doesn't convert. Now, technically speaking, I'll throw this out there. Most people probably know. If you don't, I'll mention it anyway. And that is that, let's say a person, a non-Jew, their whole family converts, right? Brothers, sisters, and the parents. Let's say the parents convert. Doesn't happen all the time. But let's say the parents convert. Now, technically speaking, this is going to be an important point also that we'll get to. We'll see if we get to. That the parents, once they convert, technically speaking, their kids are not their kids. Now, why not? You're going to say they're biological kids. It's proven DNA. Okay. We don't need any paternity test here. I'll agree. We're talking in spiritual terms. Somebody who converts, a non-Jew that converts, right? What do the rabbis tell us? They have the status of a katan shenolad dami. What's a katan shenolad dami? Like a newborn child. If they have the status of a newborn child, how in the world spiritually, not physically, how in the world spiritually can they be related to their kids? They can't. So by a non-Jew also, when they convert, there's no laws of inheritance. Technically speaking, it's also part of the issue, which we're going to get to. So now, if someone's going to tell me, isn't a convert like a full-fledged Jew, doesn't matter if their mother is Jewish or not, right? If the mother isn't Jewish, what do I care? What difference does it make? The person converted. They went through a proper rabbinical court. If they go through a proper rabbinical court, then you would tell me they're a full-fledged Jew, 100%. 100%. So what's the difference? What's the difference over here? So one thing, and again, this might be, somewhat painful for some people to hear, but again, we don't beat around the bush. We don't beat around the bush over here. One thing we have to realize is that a convert, 100%, is considered like a Jew, but the reality is we don't forget where they came from. Now, a convert can still make the blessing after conversion. Thank God I'm not a non-Jew, right? So everyone asks, how can they make the blessing? They were born a non-Jew, right? If they were born black, Chinese, Mexican, whatever, Hispanic, however they were born, if they look in the mirror, they're going to see that they're not a non-Jew, that they were born a non-Jew, right? That's pretty clear. They know where they came from. Doesn't matter. Once they get that extra aspect or other aspects of their soul, they don't have a connection to their past anymore. Technically, spiritually, their past gets demolished. It's like everything gets wiped out. They get a clean slate. It's like Yom Kippur for them. They get 100% a clean slate. So the reality is we don't forget where they came from. Now, what does that mean? That means for us that their genealogy, someone will tell me, I'm sure, someone's going to say, hey, someone who wants to convert, isn't it true it's brought down that their soul must have been at Mount Sinai? And it just sort of got messed up in the process? That their soul was at Mount Sinai, that's why they want to convert. You know why? Because if their soul wasn't at Mount Sinai, it doesn't matter if there was intermarriage assimilation, their soul became non-Jewish, and that's a whole discussion of itself according to Kabbalah. We're not going to go down there, how a soul can change, be Jewish, not Jewish, or male or female, whatever the case is. We're not even going to go down there. But the point is that, imagine next Monday night is going to be the holiday of Sukkot, right? So imagine on Tuesday, next week from this coming Tuesday, this non-Jew walks into a synagogue, and it's during the Hallel service where they're saying all these different, saying all these Psalms that we say every day, right? We say every day, Psalms from 145 to 150. They're saying these Psalms, and when they say some of the Psalms, they're shaking the lulav, right? They're saying, oh, dude, they're shaking. Here's my lulav here, right? They're shaking the lulav. They're going like this. They're shaking it like this. They're shaking it backwards. They're shaking it to the side. They're shaking it up. They're shaking it down. You got a lulav. You got a lemon on steroids, right? You got your esrog. You have your willows. You have your myrtles. Non-Jew pops in. They say, hey, what in the world is going on? It looks like they just, they dropped off into another planet. Right? So they're going to say, what the world's going on? So I grew up with this. I didn't really know what it was, so to speak, or understand it. But okay, that's what you do on Sukkot. You buy a lulav, you get an esrog. In my synagogue, one person had it, everyone else shook it. But, every Jew, women don't have to do it. They don't have to own their own. They can shake someone else's, right? But every guy has to have their own lulav. For children, you have to educate them, when they can hold it, when they can shake it. So you can get them a cheap one that, is kosher to make the blessing. They can come to synagogue. They can shake it, whatever. So why do I mention this? Because a non-Jew is going to walk in. Some hick from Kingsland is going to walk in, right? He's going to say, what in the world is going on here? What are they doing? So if I grew up Jewish and I understand to a certain extent what it is, because it's part of the holiday of Sukkot, if they didn't have their soul in Mount Sinai, they'd have no clue, right? It wouldn't even resonate with them at all. Why would it? Right? So 100% it's true that the soul was on Mount Sinai, right? The soul received the Torah. Problem is, intermarriage assimilation, then that soul became a non-Jewish soul, and they now have to go through conversion. There was a certain amount of time, before, when Abraham came on the scene, up until really the giving of the Torah Mount Sinai, anyone that wanted to join the Jewish people, they could have, right? But then it got sealed. After that, they have to go through conversion. So fine. So even though so why did I mention it? Because their soul was at Mount Sinai. If their soul was at Mount Sinai and it got messed up, so now they have to go through conversion. If they have to go through conversion, again, no Jewish blood. We're going to make it very easy. No Jewish blood at all. They can't, forget about proving it. They're not Jewish. Clear. If that is the case, then that means that their genealogy is blemished. Why is it blemished? Because Jews and non-Jews, I'm going to get in a lot of trouble for this, right? That's why he brought me here, right? Non-Jews do not have the same status as a Jew. God chose the Jewish people. We chose him. We are God's chosen people. Now, we may not always do what we're supposed to, and even Christians want to say, Jeremiah chapter 30, they are the new chosen people. We're not chosen anymore. Okay, they missed the boat. What does it mean to be to be a chosen nation or not chosen anymore? To make a new covenant. That's what I was thinking. But you have to go to the beginning of the chapter. What that means. But that we're not even going there. The whole point is they didn't accept the Torah. No non-Jewish nation accepted the Torah. The Medrash, the Talmud says clear. Avodah Zarah 2b to 3a. God goes to all the nations. Ask them if they want the Torah. They say what's written in it, and God tells them different things. They say, no, we're not interested. God goes to Jewish people. God says, you want to know what's written in the Torah? They say no. They say Naaseh v'nishma. They say we will hear, and then we're going to do. So now a non-Jew can't complain. They know, but I want part of the Torah. Too bad. It's too late. Right? So they didn't accept the Torah. Now, so the Jews to be the chosen nation, we're only chosen because we accepted Torah mitzvahs. If we don't keep Torah mitzvahs, are we any different? Are Jews any different than non-Jews? They're not different. Why not? They eat the same foods, go to the same ball games, they dress the same way. I remember, growing up that, I grew up in Boston, most people know, and there was a Boston Marathon, right? Usually the second week in April, the Boston Marathon, and I used to go to a friend of my parents. It's called Heartbreak Hill. It's like this big steep hill towards the end of the marathon. Any case, when I was engaged, I was first married, so I took my wife, and one of the comments she made was that you can't tell Jews here from non-Jews. By the way they dress, what they say, how they eat, no difference. So a Jew without Torah, no better than a non-Jew. Doesn't matter. You tell me they got that Pintele Yid. They got the spark. They got the spark that came from Mount Sinai. Every Jew has it. Doesn't mean they can't return. Does not mean that. But the point is, if they don't use it, which 13.5 million Jews today not using that spark, they don't use it at all. What happens? They're no different than non-Jews. Right? Doesn't mean we're better. It means we have more obligations. Right? Some people say, oh, you're chosen. You think you're better. It has nothing to do with being better. Anyone wants to take on my obligations? They want to get up at 4:45 tomorrow, get up and say slichas, be in synagogue, Wednesday night, Thursday, 27 hours and fast. More than happy to take my obligation. But Jews, we have an obligation. So a Jew doesn't take on obligations. They're no different than non-Jews. Either they take on a few of them. They're still no different. But that's not even the point. The point is that genealogy is an issue. It's an issue. You're going to say, just because they weren't born Jewish, you're going to say that we're so much better? It has nothing to do with being better. A Jew, and I'm going to get in a lot of trouble for this also, a Jew has extra components of the soul that a non-Jew doesn't have. What that means is a Jew's soul can be elevated by doing mitzvahs. A non-Jewish soul can also be elevated by keeping the mitzvahs they have to keep, right? The 7 mitzvahs of Noah, what we call the Noahide laws. They can also be elevated, but it's not going to be the same. They don't have the same obligations. They don't have the same level of obligations. Non-Jews are not judged by necessarily what they think. They're only judged on things. Non-Jews don't know this, so we're going to mention it now. We just went through Rosh Hashanah. Non-Jews get judged on Rosh Hashanah. They all get judged on Rosh Hashanah, even though they're not aware. But what are they obligated in? Laws that are universal. Universal according to the Torah. That makes sense according to the Torah. So that's it. I mean, there are a lot of laws, more than 50 laws, that they have to keep. They are complex. I'm going to start after the holiday of Sukkot, giving classes for Noahites, teaching them, how to be Noahites and, have them be teachers to other non-Jews, etc. But we're different. Jews and non-Jews are different. So a Jew, the Ramchal says in Derech Hashem, a lot of it has to do, that book has to do with Kabbalah, right? It's all about why God created the world, the purpose of man, the evil inclination, how it works, reincarnations, I mentioned, the purpose of non-Jews, very deep book. And I think, everyone should get and read, even if it's hard to go through in English. It sets the stage of what we're doing in this world, what our purpose is by Jews and non-Jews. So says the Ramchal, very much steeped in Kabbalah, the Ramchal says, you know what? Jews at a certain, when that soul went in and they're keeping Torah mitzvah, that soul is elevated. Non-Jews don't start at that level. They don't have the same aspect of the soul. If they don't have the same aspect of the soul, doesn't mean they can't have a portion of the world to come. What it means is they're blemished in a certain way. Now, does that mean they have to convert? No. They can stay the same. They can still eat pork. They can still eat shrimp. Had a Noahide once tell me, I can never convert. I like shrimp too much. Okay? I was like, we don't need you anyway. Like, scram, who cares? Right? You want to take on all the mitzvahs? Fine. But you don't have to become Jewish to have a portion of the world to come. Now, some people say, I want to take it all on. I don't want part of it. This, that. Doesn't matter. If God wanted everyone to be Jewish, they would have been. So therefore, what? Genealogy is important. Where my soul comes from is important. It's pretty crucial. Right now, we're going to get on to the fact that, okay, genealogy is a problem. If genealogy is a problem, that's why a mamzer. What's a mamzer? A mamzer is a child from a forbidden relationship. Two people not allowed to be together. Doesn't necessarily mean a child out of wedlock, right? It could be, one's married, one's not married, but it's a forbidden relationship. So who does this child allow to marry? The child's only allowed to marry someone from the same type of union or a convert. They're only allowed to marry someone in the same union or a convert. So again, question's going to be, I don't understand. This child, this child came from a forbidden union, right? So what's the convert going to say? What am I, chopped liver? I'm a second-class citizen. Why should that be? Why should that be? Why is the moms only marry someone in the same union or a convert, right? So what's the reason? What's the reason over here? And that is, again, because even though they can reach a high spiritual level, they can convert, be even greater than a Kohen, right, in different ways. So that may all be true. At the same time, what does it show? It shows they still don't have the best lineage. They don't have the best lineage. Now, again, people could say, well, that's racist. And that's it. Someone earlier, told me, and I didn't verify this, but it's probably very easy to verify. Somebody becomes president of the United States, right? You have to be a full citizen, right? Born and bred, etc. Maybe, right? What if someone, got a visa, got citizenship, but they weren't, they were naturalized, right? They weren't born American, right? So I'll have to verify this later. Is it true that somebody like that, can they be president? I don't think they can. Someone told me they can't. It's only someone born and bred as an American. You can say, oh, that's racist. What? You don't let someone who came from Nicaragua, someone who came from Panama, someone who came from South America, China, you don't let them become president. Why can't they become president? Right? What's the problem? Because it's on the books. Right? It's on the books. It's something about lineage. Something about lineage over here that you have to be a born, full-fledged American. It doesn't mean naturalization is good enough. It doesn't mean having a visa coming in is enough. You want to be the top notch, the top dog, so to speak. You want to be Mr. Number One, Mr. President, can't do it. Right? If that is true, I understand. Right? It's not similar, right? But we can understand to a certain extent, lineage is pretty crucial. So over here, it's not about a convert being a second-class citizen. There's an issue with genealogy. If there's an issue with genealogy, a mamzer is a blemished is a blemished soul over here. There are spiritual repercussions for our actions. It's a blemished soul. So now someone's going to say, well, a Jew can't marry such a person. A normal Jew can't marry such a person because here you're talking about someone who's blemished. They have a blemished soul. Okay. So now who are they going to marry? The only other people they can marry is either someone from the same union, means their soul is blemished, or a convert. But you're going to tell me, but a convert's a full-fledged Jew. They are to a certain extent, but we have to remember, genealogy and lineage is crucial, right? There are humble beginnings. If there are humble beginnings, it doesn't mean just like in the next case, right? That would explain as well why a Kohen is not allowed to marry a convert. A Kohen has an elevated status among the Jewish people, right? Today it doesn't really mean so much. Way back when the Kohanim were busy in the temple, they were busy in the tabernacle, killing animals, sprinkling the blood, teaching the people, etc. They can't defile themselves by a dead person. They, even if it's a mother, father, sister, brother, God forbid, a child or a spouse, they cannot come in contact with a dead body. Even today, we don't have a temple in Jerusalem, so we don't have a way to fix ourselves up spiritually in that sense, only for certain things, but a Kohen cannot make himself impure whenever he wants. That he's not allowed to do. Every other Jew, not an issue, because we're always in a state of impurity. No matter how many times I go to the mikveh, it doesn't matter. It's still a certain level of impurity until there's going to be a temple, until there's going to be a Beis Hamikdash, the Messiah is going to come. It's a whole different story. But in that case, so a Kohen has an elevated status. So what does it mean today? So in synagogue, when they read the Torah, he gets called up first, right? There are only certain people he can marry. So he's got an elevated status. He just doesn't make himself impure for no reason. If there's a dead body, there's no one else to bury him or her, he can do it, right? But he's not allowed to defile himself, make himself impure whenever he wants. But the point is, he can't marry a convert. Why can't he marry a convert? He can't marry a convert, one very simple reason. Right? Again, it has to do with genealogy. It has to do with lineage. A Kohen, we understand, even though there are not too many things that make a Kohen today like it used to be. Nonetheless, we see from a few examples, a Kohen has a higher status than the rest of Jewish people. Now, who made it that way? God himself. God himself in the Torah said, these are my chosen ones amongst the Jewish people. He says a number of times, made it clear, made it absolutely clear. So a person has a problem with that, you have a problem with the Torah itself. But that's what God said. So a Kohen has an elevated status. I can't be a Kohen. But my father wasn't a Kohen. Right? I made a joke here. Here the Kohanim praise the congregation. They bless the congregation every day. In America, outside of Israel, anywhere outside of Israel, they bless the congregation only in the holidays. Right? And the high holy days. Some Sephardic people, they hold like the land of Israel and they bless the congregation every day. But Ashkenazim don't, Hasidim don't. But they're an elevated status. So once, by my oldest son's bar mitzvah, so when my father, blessed memory, was here, and he never saw Kohanim bless the congregation, he said, how come you didn't go up and do that? So I said, because you were cheap. I said, if you would have been so cheap, I would have been a Kohen. Right? If you would have paid enough, I could have been a Kohen. But that wasn't the case. So a Kohen has an elevated status. A Levi, also, Levite. Kohen and Levi come from the same tribe of Levi. They also have an elevated status to a certain extent, right? But it's not for me to question. This is what the Torah tells me, right? This is exactly what the Torah tells me. So if they have an elevated status, there are only certain people they can marry. Right now, let's say, I'll give an example. So let's say there's a Jewish woman who's promiscuous. She was promiscuous, and she's dating a Kohen, and she tells the Kohen believes her. Let's just say the Kohen believes her. Can't marry her. A Jew, he cannot marry. Why not? Because she has a certain status. She has a blemished status. Right now, how many non-Jews, and we're not going to get gross, they were going to keep it PG-13, right? How many non-Jewish women, can say they're totally pure before they get married, right? Meaning they're a virgin before they're married. Not going to take a survey, right? It's not going to be a high percentage, especially today. Not going to be a high percentage. So somebody like that, forbidden, marry a Kohen. So someone's going to say, come on, you really think, all non-Jewish women are like that? I'll say Jewish women also that aren't religious. What's the difference? Right? I'm not going to call a spade across the board. Right? But there's a blemish. There's a blemish. Say, but I want to marry a Kohen. They're blemished. If they're blemished and the Jew is blemished, how can they marry a Kohen? Right? I know a friend of mine told me a story. Kohen married to he can't marry a divorcee. Kohen's not allowed to marry someone who's divorced. So he says, worst case scenario, my kids won't be Kohanim. They'll be what we call a halal. What is a halal? A Kohen is a blemished Kohen who can't serve in the temple. He goes, that'll be the worst case scenario. My kids will not be Kohanim. So my friend said, you idiot. That's not the worst case scenario. The worst case scenario is it's a Torah prohibition for a Kohen to marry someone who's divorced. That's what the Torah says. Kohen cannot marry a divorcee. So if that's the case, it's not just your kids aren't Kohanim, right? Forget a convert. We're not even talking about that. We're talking about a Jew, right? So you're going to tell me, that's the worst case scenario? That's not the worst case scenario. Worst case scenario is every time the Kohen is with his wife intimately, it's a Torah prohibition. It's a Torah prohibition. That's the worst case scenario. So there's a certain hierarchy over here. Whether you like it, whether you don't like it, there's elevated status. The Jewish people have an elevated status, but they only have an elevated status if they keep the Torah and mitzvahs. Doesn't mean they lose that aspect of the soul. That aspect of the soul maybe gets demolished. But the reality is their soul is elevated because they accepted the Torah Mount Sinai. But a non-Jew can say, if I would have been there, I would have done it. I had somebody tell me this. If I would have been there at the time, and I would have been in my great-great-great-great-great-great-grandparents' generation, I would have accepted the Torah. So you know what I said? Who cares? As we say in Boston, who the heck cares? It doesn't matter. You weren't there. And we don't care what you would have done. It's sealed. So now you have to go through conversion. You say, but it's not my fault. You're right. 100%. It's not your fault. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. There is a certain status. But it only works. It only works if we keep Torah mitzvahs. If we keep what we're supposed to do, then the soul gets elevated. But what if we don't? What if 13.5 million Jews keep barely any mitzvahs? Are they any different, like we said before? Are they any different than non-Jews? They're no different. Why would they be any different? They eat the same food. They go to the same schools. Go to the same universities. They work together. They marry each other. What's the problem? What's the problem? The problem is that your soul is going to get destroyed. That's what's going to happen. Right? So there's an elevated status based on one fact. And it's not based on the fact of what I think. Because it doesn't matter what I think. Nobody cares what I think. Right? It's elevated because that's what the Torah tells me. The Torah tells me that the Jews are the chosen people. Right? Which means that we have to accept the Torah. That means we have greater responsibility. How can a non-Jew have that status? And how can a non-Jew be chutzpahdik enough to say, I'm just as good? What, listen, if a non-Jew keeps the Noahide laws properly and a secular Jew doesn't keep what they're supposed to do, is that non-Jew going to have an elevated status in the next world? 100%. They absolutely going to have an elevated status. Now, that's only because they're doing what they're supposed to do, and the Jew is not. But if the Jew does what he's supposed to do, then how can a non-Jew, I guess, anybody can say anything. Right? We're in the 21st century. They say, my status is just as equal. But that's not true. Does a non-Jew have an obligation, to keep kosher? No. Keep Shabbos? No. Do any of these other mitzvahs? No. I mean, there are mitzvahs they do have to keep. But it distinguishes us from them. So if God wanted everyone to be Jewish, they would have been. But that's not the case. So there's a major issue over here. And that major issue is genealogy. So it's not about, I think I'm better. Again, anyone who wants to take on all my commandments, they're more than welcome. But God did not make Jews and non-Jews equal. They're not. Right? If we don't hold our end up holding our end of the bargain, we're no different than non-Jews. But we have a different purpose. We absolutely have a different purpose. So then someone's going to say, why? Why shouldn't we be the same? Because the Torah tells me. Torah tells me that Jews are going to be the light into nations. If we're going to be light into the nation, that means we have to do what we're supposed to do. And if we don't do what we're supposed to do, we know better. That's true, right? But we do have one major advantage. The one major advantage is our souls were on Mount Sinai that accepted the Torah. A non-Jew can't say that, right? They could say, yeah, it was there and it got messed up. I have to go through conversion. Fine. But as a non-Jew, regardless of that cardiac feeling that they have, and they say, I'm doing more than most Jews and whatever, fine. But that doesn't butter the biscuit, doesn't change anything. And if they don't go through the process of conversion, they stay a non-Jew. That's the bottom line. But it doesn't elevate us if we don't do what we're supposed to do. Right? So now, now based on that, now I got 3.5 minutes to go through about 40 minutes of material. That's great, because I didn't think there's going to be 2 shows. Right? So over here, what do we have? We have another issue. We have another issue which we're not going to get to, right? But I just want to mention the other issue. The first thing that we mentioned was the fact that the mother has to be Jewish in order for a convert to be a judge, right? To judge other Jews. But he can't, but if the mother is Jewish, not a problem, right? Not a problem. So again, the rabbis are learning out. They're learning out from this verse that you can't have a foreign man over here, even if the person is Jewish and is converted. There's still it's certain things considered like a foreigner. It's not 100%. But there's another issue, and this other issue gets into a whole bunch of other things, which I guess we'll get on Sunday. And the other issue is, what does the Torah here tell me? The Torah here says, Deuteronomy chapter 17, verse 15, like we quoted before, you're going to choose from among your brethren a king over yourself. Now, this is talking about making a king. Jewish people were jealous. They wanted their own king. God says, fine, I'll allow you to have a king. So a foreigner cannot be a king, right? A foreign man cannot be a king. Now, that being the case, but what are we talking about? What are we talking about? Are we talking about one aspect of it is the fact that you're talking about a king who's going to lead the Jewish people. Another aspect of it, what does the king do? The king has power, right? The king has real power. If he wanted to, if he had absolute power, he could execute people, right? 100% he could execute people. The only one that has seemingly that type of power today, as far as I understand, is Saudi Arabia, right? The king can do almost anything. He's got that type of power. Just about anywhere else. Monarchy, back in England, she'll never die. She'll die before she gives over, her queenship to her, to the prince over there. But there's no sense of kingship today. They don't have that kind of power, right? They don't have that kind of power. The only type of power like that is in Saudi Arabia. Good. So, but what are we talking about here? We're not only just talking about a king. We're talking about the power that the king has. So if the king has power, maybe you're going to tell me, and I won't go over here, right? But I'll just throw this out there because we're going to hit a lot of different issues next week. And that is, if the king has real power, what are we saying over here? The king is someone who's not, you can't put a king or set over the Jewish people someone who's a foreign man, someone who's not your brother. So that would seem to say convert can't be a king, but it's beyond that, right? We're not just talking about kingship, right? What is it talking about? It's talking about power. It's talking about leadership. If it's talking about leadership, what do we understand from this verse as well? We understand someone who's a foreigner, someone who's not considered your brother, guess what? They shouldn't be allowed to have a position of leadership. Oh, so now William Hall in Kingsland, Texas is going to ask, no, but they converted. They already converted. They already have the status of a Jew. But even if they have the status of the Jew, we see it's not 100%. There are certain issues that they might be limited in. So what do we see from this verse as well? We see that they can't have positions of power. Now, what is that referring to? Could be referring to not just a rabbinical court judge, right? The question could be, can a convert be a rabbi of a synagogue? Can he be the head of a yeshiva? Can it be a ram, in a yeshiva, a rabbi that gives classes in the yeshiva? Why? These are positions of leadership. If it's positions of leadership, should be forbidden, right? 100%. Maybe it should be forbidden, or maybe we'll say these are not necessary leadership positions. I mean, they are to a certain extent. One opinion's going to be, they're just giving classes. Even if they could, expel a student, accept a student, that's not real power, right? So one position could be that might be okay. Another position could be that it's clear. It's clear over here that if they can't have power or any level of leadership position, that means they can't be a rabbi of a synagogue. That means they can't be, a rabbi in yeshiva, head of a yeshiva. Maybe they can give other classes, right? But certain things, they might be limited. Why? $1 million question. Why? Because of this verse. Because this verse is going to tell you that someone who's a foreigner, even though they converted, right? Even though they converted, right? There's going to be an issue because they can't have that type of power, right? And that's what we learn out over here. But again, it opens up a whole, a whole bag over here that, I think we'll just, hold off and speak about it next week. And then
read them.
And then we'll, whatever, we'll take it from there because it does, it does get, it does get a little more complicated. But that's, that's essentially the issue. So yeah, I would agree. It's a catch-22. When's a chicken not a chicken? When's a piece of meat not a piece of meat? When's a convert not necessarily considered, considered like a Jew?
Right.
And you would say 100%. Well, if they're Jewish, they're Jewish. But we see, there are limitations. Right? Convert can't marry a Cohen.
Right.
Convert, can only marry a mamzer or someone in the same union. So that there are certain, there are certain limitations, but that's...
But in general, like you're saying...
That's the verse we learn it from.
Right. But in general, a convert is...
that's where it comes from. Yeah.
Gotcha. But in general, a convert is viewed as a Jew overall. It's just there's specific things that they...
No, there are specific things, but, we can also get into, so why someone moves into a community, into a Jewish community, why are they going to have difficulty getting married?
Right.
If they're full-fledged Jews, why are they going to have difficulty maybe getting their kids into Jewish schools?
That makes sense.
Or
right.
why maybe they be treated like, they're not treated like they should be, in different ways, which is wrong. Because there are many, many prohibitions that say you don't give converts a hard time.
Right.
You don't give widows a hard time because they don't have people that can defend them.
Mm-hmm.
Who's going to defend the convert and the widow? You speak against them, you do things against them. God himself.
Right.
God himself is going to do that. I don't think anyone wants to start with him. You want to start with other people, it's one thing. You're bigger than them, you'll win. Probably majority of the time. Or I was saying, my way back is like, my son-in-law's got a gun, an Arab's got a knife, gun and a knife, probably the gun's going to win. Right, remember in Raiders of the Lost Ark, guy, this ninja guy comes like in the middle of the square, and he's like, with all his, with his sword, and Harrison Ford takes out the gun and goes, boom.
You want to hear a really cool trivia?
Shoots him in the middle of the square.
A really cool
so
trivia.
You got a sword, you got a gun, that's it. Gun wins normally. If you know how to shoot.
An interesting trivia.
So yeah, that's going to be a question also, and I get this question a lot.
That's
why
funny.
does rabbi say this? Why does this person do that? Why don't they treat me like a human? Right? That's wrong. Obviously, it's wrong. There's no question. I can maybe try and defend why they said something, maybe not. Some things aren't defensible, but that is a complaint. That is definitely a complaint, but a person has to realize, unfortunately, there's a reality.
Right.
And just because Jews do certain things, don't mix up Jews and Judaism. Doesn't necessarily mean it's right. Right? But if a person's in for the long haul, it doesn't matter. Right? It's really not going to matter. They understand. There are certain things the way they are. Listen, there are people who will marry in my family. I didn't grow up religious. Parents and, aren't religious. My whole family's not religious. They want a certain genealogy also. So I said, fine, I don't need you. Find other people, other people's family. But there's a reality. There are some people, I'll just throw this out there, because I know you're going to give me an extra half hour. I know that, there's some families that if they don't have 3 generations where the family has practiced family purity laws, right, they won't marry, they won't have their kid marry into that family. Right? Because for them, it's like some sort of blemish. Right? Because there are some people that have unbelievable, strong genealogy. Just go back to great rabbis and great rabbis. They have unbelievable genealogy, which we all do to a certain, all Jews have to a certain extent. They go to a great-grandfather, a great-great-grandfather, etc. They should be well versed in Torah mitzvahs. It's only the last number of generations that have gone off, right? But in general, yeah, there might be discrimination that way also. But there's a reality. And if a person comes in, someone will say, I want to marry into the Syrian community. The Syrian community does not take converts. Doesn't matter how great they are. They will not have converts in the community. They had problems, whatever, that's it. Someone says, but I want to marry someone who's Syrian. Don't! It's just not going to happen. Right? However many years ago it was done, it was sealed, it's never, ever going to happen. Right? People always pick the greatest cases. Why can't I marry Cohen? Why can't I do... There are certain things you can't do. That's it. It's not. I'm not saying it's an easy thing to deal with, right. But again, genealogy plays a very, very important part. People say, "Oh, it doesn't really matter. We're all the same." We're not.
Okay.
God did not create everybody the same.
Rabbi.
Regardless of what the Declaration of Independence says,
Rabbi.
We're not all the same.
Rabbi.
Yeah.
Can you hear me pretty good?
I can hear you loud and clear.
You can't. So I tried to interrupt you like 8 times, and you wouldn't let me speak. What the heck?
Sorry. Go ahead. The floor is yours.
Okay, so Benjamin wants to know what part of Boston you're from, or where'd you grow up in Boston?
I grew up in a place called Braintree. Braintree, south of Boston.
Cool.
It was the final Jeopardy question.
The final Jeopardy question actually was
2 presidents born and buried in the same place. Right? It was John Quincy Adams, born in Quincy, Massachusetts. Quincy, Massachusetts is a town right next to where I grew up in. Someone actually, I don't even know why they would know this if you weren't from Boston. I don't know how you would know that. Someone put in Braintree. So I was like, how would anyone know that except for me? Because I grew up there. So Alex Trebek, the next show, had like a 5-minute explanation. I was famous. My hometown was famous for like 5 minutes. So,
right.
Yeah, that's where I grew up. South of, about 11 miles south.
Gotcha.
South of Boston.
All right. Well, guess what? That, my friend, is a wrap.
That's all you want to interrupt me? You're 8
no,
times,
actually, no. I had. There was a couple other things, but I've lost track of what they were. Oh, one of them was actually a trivial thing with the whole thing with the Raiders of the Lost Ark or whatever it was with Harrison Ford. That whole scene, they said that wasn't even scripted. It was kind of like improvised, and they said they thought it was so funny they kept it.
Okay, that's good. Listen, it's a great scene, though. It's kind of like it's like kind of Custard going against the Indians. Right? They get all their weapons and says, okay, I'm going to fight against everybody by myself. That's it. He's toast.
Right.
Finished. But, that's what happened. American, what do you call it? Forget what it's called. Manifest Destiny, right? Going from New York to California. So the Indians said, the Americans said, we got a problem with the Indians. Said, no problem. We'll bring out the cavalry. Guns against bows and arrows. Guns win. That's what happened.
Right on. Abby, welcome. Good to see all you guys out there. Danny, Barbara, I'm going to miss a whole lot of people, Paolo. Thank you guys for tuning in. Janice, Dewey. So you guys have a great week, and we'll look forward to seeing you guys same time, same place next week, Hashem willing.
Part 2 next week, Sunday. Yirtzeh Hashem.
There you go. Sunday, same time, 11:45. Yeah.
12:30. 12:30 Eastern time. 11:30 your time.
Yeah, 11:30. There you go. You know my schedule better than I do. Okay.
7:30 Israel time. 4 o'clock in the morning Eskimo time. I don't know.
That's right. All right, we'll see you guys later. Be sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel and turn on notifications. We'll see you next time. Shalom, everybody.